about Shane Jones. And while you were wooing the Indian government and, actually had a very successful tour, your party colleague was at it again. And after you came back, you apparently supported what he said. Now, you must be having your reasons for supporting him. The Prime Minister pulled him up. I mean, as the Indian community here can't actually understand what's going on, because one commentator said that, it probably was Shane Jones trying to push for the leadership of the New Zealand First Party. I mean, what's the New Zealand First Party playing at? I mean, are we...
Well, hang on. You've got about 6 questions in here.
Yeah, okay.
Can I answer the first one?
Yeah, answer the first one, yeah.
Well, the first one is this.
Yeah.
I have possibly got 35 different articles from the Indian news, Indian newspapers, Indian commentators.
Yeah.
At the time, there was massive disruption in our export education at the tertiary level, where students were coming in from India and they were being ripped off by the New Zealand export education industry. I mean, seriously ripped off. All sorts of people made comments about it, including that member of the National Party, Bakshi. He made comments about it. I've got all this record of everybody saying it, and now when somebody gets up and says it like Shane Jones, everybody's screaming out and saying, what are you talking about? And the answer is, we're talking about what we were all talking about back then. And can you recall when 451 of them were being sent back home, unfairly in my view, and can you recall which political party got up and said, this is wrong, they should not be sent home, we should fix our export education system up properly?
Absolutely. What you're saying is right, Mr. Peters. In fact, you're actually stating facts. But I think the issue is not about those facts. The issue is the language which Mr. Jones has been using. For example, when the immigration issue came up, a lot of Indians actually support they support what Mr. Jones said, but they don't support the language. They don't support, him saying, go back to your village. Even, when he spoke about the students, he had something very nasty to say about all the entire Indian community. The Indian community actually has contributed a lot to the Indian economy. We are upright citizens, most of us, and we do, work with the mainstream. So I think the anger in the Indian community is more towards the language. Now, is it because when we talk to the people on the street, some of them say it's politics. They say that Shane Jones is from Harvard. He knows what he's talking about. He is trying to, address his constituency. But in this, somehow the Indian community feels a bit, miffed.
Well, I tell you, they should feel miffed as well, but they should feel miffed with the right people. Because at the time, Bakshi was saying, and others were saying, that a lot of these Indian students were being ripped off by their own people. You've got restaurants who were ripping off their workers.
Absolutely.
With holding their passports and visas and everything, and paying them substandard wages and not being observant of the proper working hours. All this was happening, all in the in the Indian newspapers, all commented on by people like Bakshi. And dare I say it, we went into the coalition to agree to sort out this migrant problem where students were concerned, because the National Party, they went from 2013, 12,000 coming from India, to 29,000 in 4 years flat, and they didn't give any regard or couldn't care less what was happening to those students. I'm in India, and I say to the Indian authorities, when students have come to New Zealand, we stand in the shoes of their parents. We're meant to look after them. And so we're not residing from the fact that this almighty mess and very damaging to students was happening, where they were the victims of exploitation, and we're just repeating what was the facts back then. They won't change just because it doesn't suit people to realise that it was happening in their name.